Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Film for Fans podcast, your home for movie news, reviews, and movie fan views, the podcast from movie fans for movie fans. I am your host, Ryan Dunlevy, joined as always by my co-host, Rob Dunham.
School's out for summer. Movies.
Yes, we are getting to that time. We're in June now, people, and it's officially summer movie season, if it wasn't already. But kind of Memorial Day is the weekend, is the kickoff to summer movie season. So now we are in it. We are in it big time. We got an excellent show for you. We're going to talk about, of course, our box office update. We'll hit on some of the things with Top Gun Maverick. I'm going to quiz Rob on the top 5 opening weekend Tom Cruise box office films, and we'll see how he does on that. We're going to go back to our series on the best movies from 2012 by talking about dramas this time, and of course our watch list. All right, Rob, ready to get started?
I am.
The box office results is where we're going to start today, and to the surprise of absolutely nobody, number one at the box office is Top Gun Maverick. It depends on exactly how you calculate it, because this was a holiday weekend. If you just go by the official weekend days, the movie made 126.7. If you include Monday, which usually they do on Memorial Day releases, the film made over $150 million. An excellent debut for Top Gun Maverick. In the second position is Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, 16.1 million. The Bob's Burger movie had a strong showing for a more niche movie at 12.4 million to finish at number 3. Downton Abbey: A New Era made 5.8 million in its second week in the box office. And rounding out the top 5 is The Bad Guys, which continues to perform well in its 6th week in the box office at 4.4 million. All right, Rob. Top Gun Maverick, big showing. What do you make of it?
I'm surprised. I think, not that it's number one in the box office. I think that was always going to happen, but to be like the best Memorial Day opening weekend ever. So movies are back.
Yes.
Apparently.
Yes.
We finally say that. At least for now. For a little while. But our big question was, would there be enough of a connection with a new audience for this to make the amount of money that potentially it could make? And I think the answer to that has been a resounding yes. Yes. And that's something that's very hard to gauge. I know a lot of people our age were interested in going to see it and older than us because of the connection with the previous movie. So you knew about that interest, but it was really hard to gauge what a younger audience's interest in the movie was. But it seems to be pretty strong. And Tom Cruise's death has been greatly exaggerated.
Yes, for sure. It's fascinating. The official numbers, if you include the 4-day weekend, there's 160.5 million, which makes it the number one, as you said earlier, the number one Memorial Day release of all time, just topping Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, which had $156 million. If you just go with the 3-day weekend total, it didn't quite pass Pirates of the Caribbean. It did a little under a million less, or a little over $1 million less in the 3-day weekend. But if you include 4 days, then it's number one of all time. What's interesting about this is there's a couple of interesting factors for me. One is this is the number one box office opening for Tom Cruise of all time. And the man turns 60 like tomorrow. And I did not realize this would be his number one opening. And it's not, it's by a wide margin too, that it's his number one opening weekend of all time. I just didn't have a sense of that. And I was a little surprised by how well it did. but we can talk more about the movie itself in that front is. But what do you make of it in terms of, you talked about a little bit in terms of what this says about the box office going forward this summer?
Yeah, I think it is an indication that people are, more and more people are coming out to the movies. In fact, I've talked to a few people who said that this was the movie that would bring them back, or was bringing them back, like their first movie since they stopped going to the movies.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with someone who said they saw this movie and they saw that there's a new Jurassic World movie coming out, and that made them want to go see that. And so I think one thing that maybe we underestimate, because I thought about that comment for a little bit, and I think something that you and I and people who are really into movies, like on the Pulse movies, might underestimate, is that people who casually go to the movies sometimes don't know what movies are coming out until they actually physically see trailers for movies.
Yeah.
Because not everyone is like all about following all the news.
Yeah.
So the fact that something like that might be showing before this movie might drive more people to see Jurassic World too, you know, and other movies that are coming out that they find interesting.
Yeah. I think my comments on this in terms of the box office is, I think we're getting the sense of big tentpole movies are going to do well in the modern box office. They are. Like, people are gonna come out to the theaters to see the big blockbuster movies. I think we've gauged that from Spider-Man to Batman to Marvel movies to Top Gun. Now people are going to come out and see that. What we may not be quite seeing yet is people coming back for the smaller movies yet. That's, I think, the next phase of the box office coming back. But I think what this says, the demise of the box office has been greatly overstated. There's an article we'll link to from Deadline that talks about the validation of them holding on to this property and making sure it got released entirely in the box office and not being seduced by the streaming like so many of the other networks have. And we've talked about that balance between streaming versus box office, but I think we can say the demise of the box office has been greatly overstated. Yeah. Yeah, it will be interesting. It will be interesting to see what we make of this. One thing I was thinking about, and I wrote if you go to filmforfans.com, I wrote a long review of Top Gun Maverick that's up on the website now. But one of the things I was thinking about, and maybe you can help me out with this, has there been another well-done movie about fighter pilots set in the modern era since Top Gun, the original? I couldn't.
Probably not. Yeah.
I couldn't think of one. And that, to me, that's mind-blowing, because nowadays a movie of a specific genre succeeds and it spawns like 8 movies of along similar lines. How did that not happen with Top Gun?
Yeah, I think the only things that I can think might even be in consideration would be like Behind Enemy Lines, with Owen Wilson, which is not like a great movie, but it was a decent movie in that kind of genre, if you want. And obviously Independence Day, the original one. You know, if you want to count them as fighter pilots. I mean, they are fighter pilots, and then they fly alien ships.
Yeah.
So that probably doesn't qualify.
Not really. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, one of my 5 top dramas of 2012 involves a pilot, but it's not a fighter pilot, so that doesn't qualify either.
Yeah, I mean, like, you had some pretty decent stuff in like Dunkirk or even in Midway recently, but those are all World War II. But I was just thinking about that, and I'm like, it's really fascinating. All right, well, let's move on from that. Upcoming this week, we have 2 entrances into the box office. And the first one is Crimes of the Future. And this is starring Viggo Mortensen, Lea Seydoux, Kristen Stewart, Don McKellar. And it is humans adapt to a synthetic environment with new transformations and mutations. With his partner Caprice, Saul Tenser, celebrity performance artist, publicly showcases the metamorphosis of his organs in avant-garde performances. So this is kind of like a drama horror sci-fi crossover. It's kind of hard to gauge exactly where this one's going to land. Directed by Dave Cronenberg. So that's the first one. And the second one on the list is Watcher. And this stars Micah Moore, Carl Golson, and Bern Gorman. And this is, as a serial killer stalks the city, Julia, a young actress who's moved to town with her boyfriend, notice a mysterious stranger watching her from across the street. And this is a horror thriller. So Rob, what do you make of the entrance this week into the box office?
So out of the two, I am most interested in Crimes of the Future. Mm-hmm. And David Cronenberg, if you're looking for tone, I think he's usually really good at making things that are like real raw and visceral and grounded and real. So I think even with like a sci-fi type movie, you'll probably get the same kind of feeling. Yeah. Some of the movies he's done before: Dangerous Method, A History of Violence, Eastern Promises. Yep. Eastern Promises, starring Viggo Mortensen.
Yeah, it's big in the Viggo Mortensen camp.
Yeah. So I expect it to be a really well done movie. It's definitely one I'm interested in going to see. Mm-hmm. So hopefully I'll have some time to head to the theater and check it out.
Yeah, I would agree. I think this one has the most potential intrigue. There's always that weird balance sometimes between the sci-fi and horror as to whether or not it's going to err a little bit more on the horror or a little bit more on the sci-fi end. Sometimes it happens even within the same film. So where it falls on that side of the balance will probably determine whether or not I will really like it or not. But that'd be the one that I'm most intrigued with at this point. But it is going to be I doubt that either of these films will pull much weight, given the fact that there will still be a lot of people who have not seen Top Gun Maverick, and I fully expect Top Gun Maverick to kill it at the box office again this coming weekend.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what the percentage drop is for Top Gun Maverick from the opening weekend through the second week.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's not going to be that. I mean, it's going to be a drop off, but I'm guessing it's not going to be super dramatic. Which was the film we were talking about recently that did not have a huge drop off from week 1 to week 2? There was one that we were talking about in a previous podcast. It was one of the big ones. I just can't remember which one.
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head either.
Yeah, all right. I'll have to look that up because I want to see and compare the drop off of this one to some of the other big ones we've seen and see what word of mouth does for it. Okay, that's the box office. And now we move on to our discussion section. And our first discussion, given Tom Cruise's massive success at the box office and my real surprise that he had never had a film break 100 million on the opening weekend, I thought I would do some research and I would give Rob a little game to play. What this is going to look like is Rob has to guess the top grossing opening weekend Tom Cruise movies. We're going to do top 5. So can he guess the top 5? And then can he put them in correct, accurate order? Now, this is not based on their full run at the box office, but just on their opening weekend. So that's the task at hand, Rob. If you are up for the challenge,
let's see how many guesses it takes me to get the top 5.
One caveat to this: I had to use multiple databases to gather this info because I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it quickly and easily because part of it's behind a paywall on the site I normally use. So I had to basically look up his top grossing movies and then separately look up their opening weekend. So is it possible that one of the movies was not on one of the lists, but is on the other one? Maybe, but I don't think so. So that's what we got.
Okay, so Top Gun Maverick is on the list.
Other than Top Gun Maverick. Because we know that was number one. But the top 5 outside of Top Gun Maverick. Yeah, we're not giving you a free spin.
Okay. Is Minority Report one of the top 5?
Minority Report is not one of the top 5.
Oh, good start. Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol
is not one of the top 5.
Mission Impossible Rogue Nation.
Yes.
Okay. Mission Impossible 3.
Mission Impossible 3 is in the top 5.
Okay. Oblivion.
Oblivion is not in the top 5.
Okay. Are either of the first 2 Mission Impossibles in the top 5?
One of the first 2 is in the top 5.
Mission Impossible 2?
Correct. That is in the top 5.
So we have 3 Mission Impossibles so far.
Yes.
Rogue Nation 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
Minority Report was not. So what other movies am I not remembering? Oh, Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible, man. He'll always be Ethan Hunt to me. Vanilla Sky is not one of the top 5, is it?
It is not.
Okay. Edge of Tomorrow?
No.
Okay.
Not in top
5.
Right,
I don't know what the last 2 are. What are the last 2?
You missed one of the other Mission Impossible movies.
Okay.
Fallout.
Okay.
That's one of the last 2. And the final one in the top 5 is War of the Worlds.
Oh, okay. Well, the fact that 4 of his previous top 5 grossing movies were Mission Impossible movies kind of, lends some weight to the fact that I thought of him as Mission Impossible Man.
Indeed.
Okay, so in order, I'm going to say number 5, Mission Impossible 2. Number 4.
Hang on. I want to make the note of this here. All right. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Number 4, Mission Impossible Fallout. Number 3, War of the Worlds. Number 2, Mission Impossible 3. And number 1, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. They're probably all wrong.
And you had Rogue Nation number 1?
Yes.
Okay. All right. The order from number 5 to number 1 goes as follows. Mission Impossible 3 is number 5. It did 47.7 million on opening weekend. Number 4 was Rogue Nation. It did 55.5 million on its opening weekend. Number 3 is Mission Impossible 2 at 57.8 million. Number 2 is Mission Impossible Fallout at 61.2 million. And number 1, who knew? War of the Worlds at 64.8 million. That kind of blows me away.
So this new movie beat that by almost $100 million.
Yeah. Like that shocks me.
Yeah.
That really, it does. It shocks me that his top opening weekend was $64 million, and it was War of the Worlds of all movies.
I'm
I
very
would have thought the
interested.
Mission Impossibles would have done better than that.
Do you know what Minority Report made the opening weekend? Did you get that number? So I'm very interested in what that number is.
I can look it up here. Give me 1 second here. I think I still have the page up that we were looking at. All right. It's really close enough. Okay. Yeah, here we go. All right, so Minority Report. Opening weekend at 35.6.
I think part of this too is you're seeing the evolution of the box office, because I think a movie like Minority Report now would make way more money its opening weekend than that.
I also think that one came out within a week or two of the Bourne movie.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So if I'm remembering correctly, they were in the box office at the same time in 2002. So I think maybe that has something to do with it. But yeah, it's really interesting, and yeah, I'm just fascinated by that. Some of these, where some of these came down, like some of the ones that were not on the list. Ghost Protocol. This one has a crazy profile. You know how much it made on its opening weekend?
I don't.
12.7 million.
Wow.
12.7 million. This is a movie that did 209 million domestically, 694 million worldwide. It did 12.7 on its opening weekend.
That's crazy.
I like, what happened that opening weekend? I have no idea.
Yeah, usually if a movie opens with 12.7, it disappears.
Yeah, it does not get to 200 million. I need to go back and do more research on this, because I saw that and I'm like blown away, because that was a great movie. Yeah. Do you know, speaking of this, another one on the list, which was The Mummy. It did 31.6 million. It did 400 million all told.
Wow.
And like nobody in this country saw it.
Yeah.
It did 80 million domestically and 329 internationally.
Yeah, and if you still ask people about the movie The Mummy, 95% of people would be thinking you're talking about the Brendan Fraser movie.
Yeah, and it's just like it just is gone from the consciousness.
Like The Mummy was so bad. The new one with Tom Cruise was so poorly received. It was supposed to start an entire universe of movies, and after it came out and did what it did, they were like, "Nope, we're not doing that."
Yeah, yeah. And even that one did significantly better than Ghost Protocol.
Yeah. That was supposed to kick off a whole like classic monster thing with like Frankenstein and a couple other well-known monsters, and it just flopped so badly that they decided against it. In fact, if you watch I believe if you're watching the credits of that movie, the opening credits, there's something in the studio name that's like a reference to the fact that it is going to be part of like a new series of movies, which is really interesting because that series never happened.
Yeah. But what's fascinating about looking at Tom Cruise box office numbers is that almost all of his movies did significantly well. They all well over budget and produced well at the box office. It's just interesting that not a lot of them had monster opening weekends, which is really surprising considering the Mission Impossible movies are some of the best action franchises going. So I am definitely surprised to see where the opening weekend numbers were for that, but they all did very, very well. So that probably has something to say about the staying power of the movies he creates. And he actually has a lot of say over the content of the movies that he works on now. So it is more than just simply him as an actor, but him as a creative director too. All right. You got anything else on that?
I don't. Tom is just cruising along.
There we go. Had to get one in there. All right. So top 5 dramas from 2012. We're doing this series where we're revisiting the best movies from 10 years ago. Check out our previous episode where we talked about sci-fi and action movies. And today we're tackling dramas. So Rob, let's go back and forth here. Give me we'll do 2 and 2, and then we'll save our last one. Well, let's do honorable mentions first, if you got any of those.
I do have 2 honorable mentions.
Okay, what do you got?
Safety Not Guaranteed. Also would have fit into the sci-fi category, but it was way down that list, and it was way down this list, but I scrolled a little farther with this list. About a guy who decides he wants to build a time machine and is looking for someone to join him in his travels, and it is a heartwarming, touching, funny movie. Highly recommend it. Safety Not Guaranteed. And then my other honorable mention is Joss Whedon's Much Ado About Nothing, which is my favorite version of the story. And I think they do a really fantastic job of utilizing the original dialogue, but framing it in such a way that it's easy to follow and understand what's happening. And it's in black and white, and I just think it's a really well shot, well acted movie. So I would recommend that as well.
Yeah, I had forgotten about that one. Yeah, that was quite good. That was well done. Yeah, my honorable mentions, I have 2 also. One for me would be The Words. This is a Bradley Cooper, Zoe Saldana movie. It's basically, it's a story within a story within a story. I think they probably could have dropped the outer story on this one, but it's basically the story about a guy who's a struggling novelist who buys a briefcase. His girlfriend or wife buys him a briefcase, and it contains a manuscript in it. And the manuscript is fantastic. And then he decides to pass it off as his own and becomes a wildly famous author as a result of this script that he didn't write. But it's a really fascinating story about what transpires and how that eats away with you when you're living a lie. Good movie. The second honorable mention is The Life of Pi. And this was an Ang Lee directed, highly visual adaptation of the popular novel. There's a lot to that movie. There's a lot to it. But because of the nature, it's a deep story. It's kind of an emotionally weighty story, but the visuals are really spectacular in the way that Ang Lee is very famous for. All right, Rob, give me your 5 through give me your 5 and 4. We'll do that.
All right, so there are actually 2 on my list that were on previous lists. Okay. Number 5 is the movie Flight with Denzel Washington, about an alcoholic commercial airline pilot. It's a really excellent character study on a person struggling to overcome their demons, struggling to understand something that has happened to them, something they've been a part of. And I think it's one of his best truly dramatic roles. This is not Denzel Washington action star. It's a man who is like really introspective and trying to figure out what's going on within himself. Number 4, and this tells you how much I love this movie. Number 4 on the drama list for me is Cloud Atlas, which is number 1 on my.
I see what you're doing here. I see it.
This movie this movie is everything. So it wouldn't make the comedy list, but for drama and sci-fi, it has to make the list for both for me. So I have that at number 4.
Okay. Number 5 for me is The Help. And it was also based on a book, and this was the story about Black maids in the South and kind of the struggle they went through during the civil rights era. And it is a powerful story. It's very well done. And it's basically Emma Stone is writing a book about these maids and everything they go through and what it was like during that particular time. And it's an excellent drama piece. The characters are great. They're well acted. It's a really interesting story. So number 5 for me was The Help. Number 4, Moonrise Kingdom. Of course, this is a Wes Anderson story. And this is one of my favorite Wes Anderson stories. I think it's just really, it's interesting. It's funny. It's more easily accessible, I think, than some of his other ones. It's a good introduction to the way he tells stories. If it's just very odd for you, but it's basically the story about 2 young kids who kind of run away in a New England town, and kind of the circumstances of that. But again, it's just classic Wes Anderson with the symmetry and the dialogue and the interesting period piece take to it. Really interesting, and it's got a lot of humor into it. So it could be on the comedy list too if we wanted to go that direction.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how you said that, because it doesn't have like all the super hyper complexity of normal Wes Anderson. It's one of my least favorite Wes Anderson movies.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting.
I don't know, but I'm like a Wes Anderson nerd. So
yeah.
The 3 and 2.
Yep.
Is that what I should do here?
How about
all right, number 3 for me is The Silver Linings Playbook, Bradley Cooper. This won the Best Picture award, correct?
It definitely. I think she won. I think Jennifer Lawrence won.
It won something big.
I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah.
Let's see. Awards. Yeah, won Best Performance by Actress in a Leading Role.
Yeah.
It was nominated for Best Picture, and Bradley Cooper was nominated for Best Actor.
Yeah.
And also the supporting roles were both nominated too, and the director was nominated, but it only won for Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah, when all those things are nominated, you made a good movie. Yes. And I think that it is just a really well done, realistic take on a couple families and their connection, and the connection between Bradley Cooper's character and Jennifer Lawrence's character is great. And if you're a fan of the Eagles, it's like extra happy for you.
Which I am.
There's a whole subplot of the movie is the love for the Eagles. So it's really interesting to watch that play out on the screen. Number 2 for me is one of your honorable mentions, Life of Pi. Like you said, emotionally weighty, visually artistic. Obviously, those 2 things make it right in my wheelhouse. So Life of Pi is very high up. So I have it number 2 on my list.
Before we get into this, and I will say kind of spoiler alert here. I won't get into the depth of it, but I want to ask you a question about this movie. And frankly, it was 10 years ago. If you haven't seen it, what are you doing? What do you make of the ending to the story? Do you like it? Do you not like it? How did the ending make you feel?
It's hard to go on a journey. Like, this movie's a journey. Maybe more than most, more than mostly any movie out there.
Yeah.
And so I think when you come to the end of a journey like here, I look at like reading a good book or playing a really good game. Like, when it ends, it's hard. It's hard to find a satisfying conclusion.
Yeah.
A lot of the time. So I think there's always something wanting. Maybe that's us being selfish and wanting it to end like a certain way to make us feel good. But I like that all movies don't end that way.
Yeah.
So I didn't have an issue with it, but I understand why it would be hard for some people to deal with it.
Yeah, I don't think it was a cheap literary trick, but I do think it hurts the payoff for the journey you went on. Yeah. So yeah, I've always been a little bit torn about it, and
Yeah.
therefore slightly ambivalent about the film itself.
And like you
But
said, if you haven't seen it, you should see it. Draw your own conclusion.
yeah. All right. You get both yours, right?
Yep.
Okay. So number 3 for me is Cloud Atlas. I did not have it on sci-fi, even though it could have been. I landed it firmly in drama. And everything you were saying, the various storylines, the intricate nature of it, the acting performances, it's just an interesting film. There's just a lot there. It was a really interesting film. And like every one of those like ensemble cast films, there's some storylines you like better than others. There's some you relate to more than others. I think one of my favorites is the guys trying to break out of the old folks home. I just enjoy that storyline. That one's kind of fun.
Also, you get to see Hugo Weaving dressed up as a giant butch nurse, which is hilarious.
That is something. That is something. And the I don't know how to characterize it. The Tom Hanks, Halle Berry corporate storyline. I kind of enjoyed that one too. But yeah, lots of interesting, lots of meat there and interesting aspects to that film. Number 2 for me, I included it in this, is The Dark Knight Rises. This could have been an action, but I decided to include it in drama because I think it fits better in drama, because this is more about the fallout of what happens with Bane and what happens as a result of essentially the lie they tell at the end of The Dark Knight. And it kind of, this is the world that has been created as a result of that, and the consequences of that decisions, and those decisions as they were made, and the consequences of being Batman. And I think that best fits in drama. This was not the best of the 3 films, and there was a lot tied up into this. I think most notably, it took Christopher Nolan a little bit to get over the death of Heath Ledger, and I think he lost a little bit of steam as a result of that. But it's still a very good movie.
Yeah, I would say that the only reason why it wasn't in my top 5 or honorable mentions is, like you said, it's not The Dark Knight.
It's not.
And that movie is just such a masterpiece.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I don't think, no matter what he did, it wasn't going to live up to The Dark Knight.
No.
So it's just it will always have a little bit of a little bit of a sting for me there. And so my number 1 is actually one that was on your action list, because like you said, The Dark Knight Rises to you is more of a drama than an action movie. I feel like Argo is more of a drama movie than an action movie.
I can totally see that.
Because I think a lot of it is the behind the scenes, setting up the playbook and running through it, and then there is some action interspersed in it. But I think the main drive, the main focus, the main success of the movie, the achievement of the movie, is displaying this story about these people who are going through a real struggle and trying to figure out, the best way to do it. So there's a lot of background to it. It's not just people shooting at each other and running around. To me, it's more tense and more intricate. So I put it on the drama list, and to me, it was the best of that genre for the year.
Yeah, it was an excellent movie. There's no doubt about it. Did I ever tell you that I actually saw the actual Argo script?
No.
After it was declassified, it ended up in a spy museum. There was a copy of it in the spy museum, and I got to see I went to the spy museum, and I saw the actual Argo script, which is pretty cool.
Nice. That's very cool.
I mean, it's such an American way to do something. Hey, let's fake go create a movie to get hostages out, and like going all this, setting up, doing readings, setting up a production company. It's perfect. It's great. Yeah, I love that movie. And number 1 for me was Lincoln. Um, it's Daniel Day-Lewis is a generational actor. Almost every time he does a role, he wins Best Actor just because he puts that much in it. And he really brought Lincoln to life. He really, really brought Lincoln to life. And what I love about it is it brought you smack dab into the difficulty of trying to pass a 13th Amendment, like all the different nuances that were at play, all the different political drama that you had to go through, and how he was trying to manage a war, manage this, and how they at times the two were conflicting with each other. But it really just it gets you into the character of who Lincoln was, and I love that aspect, and it's just such a good movie.
Yeah, Daniel Day-Lewis is just, he disappears into his roles. It's just phenomenal. Like I can't think of anyone else playing that role, and certainly well deserving of being on the list. But one thing I like about doing these lists is that, you know, it just proves that in any given year there's quality movies in every genre.
Yeah. Now, if we start going later, we're going to have a harder time coming up with good comedies, but that's a whole nother point. But yeah, so that's what we got from 2012 and the drama section. So let's move on to our watch list. Movies we watched over the past week. Rob, did you watch anything?
I did. I watched a couple. I watched for the first time The Accountant with Ben Affleck.
Oh, I love that movie.
Which is currently streaming on HBO Max. If you have that, I would recommend checking it out. Ben Affleck plays an accountant who's also kind of sort of hitman. Yeah. And it's really cool. John Bernthal is also in this movie as the opposing assassin guy, the Punisher, and he was also in The Walking Dead. As the character Shane in The Walking Dead, if you watch that. I kind of saw, I'm not going to give it away, but I kind of saw what was, going to happen there pretty early into it. It seemed kind of obvious. But it was still a pretty well done movie. And I think Ben Affleck did a really superb job acting in this, and probably one of the better acting performances I've seen from him. And I also watched The Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl.
Oh, okay.
The Caribbean movie. Amidst all the trialing with Johnny Depp, who won today, by the way, as he should.
I think $15 million reward for Johnny Depp on that one.
This performance is just hilarious and perfect, and I can't think of anyone else pulling it off quite the way he did. And really, the fact that they achieved so much out of the series, starting with this one, making movies based on a theme park ride.
Yes.
It's pretty amazing. And I think that it needed that character in that role for that to happen. Even if some of the movies aren't based entirely around him, I don't think any of the other movies would have happened without him.
Correct.
And I think that also the character of William Turner is also quite a good character. And Elizabeth Swann also, and she gains some more notoriety and, effect on the series as it goes on. But I thought that whole movie is a great movie, well deserving of being a major box office movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. For me, 2 movies. I saw Top Gun Maverick. We'll save our deep analysis of the movie until Rob gets a chance to see it. But if you are interested in my direct thoughts on everything I thought about the movie, go to filmforfans.com. My full review of the movie is up there. But suffice to say, I really enjoyed this movie. It was better than I thought. I think the thing that it did so well is it used the nostalgia as a template. It did not rely on it. And it's very tough to balance that sort of nostalgia property with trying to create something new and original, and very few filmmakers get it right. And I think he did. And it's no small part. I think this is something that we can now say John Krasinski has a talent for, because he's now done it twice. He's only directed like 4 or 5 films, and he's done it twice. With Tron Legacy in his directorial debut, I think he did a fantastic job in that one of taking a classic film and making something new and original. And he did the same thing here with Top Gun Maverick. So highly recommend you see it. The second one I've watched was The Count of Monte Cristo with Jim Caviezel and I'm blanking on the other guy's name now.
Guy Pearce.
Guy Pearce, thank you. Yes, Guy Pearce. Love this film. Love this film. It's really, really good. The story of the Count of Monte Cristo is fantastic, but the way they told it in this one, he just does such a great job of playing that innocent turned vengeful, calculating force that is the Count of Monte Cristo. Richard Harris, one of his last roles before he died, also played in many other films, but including Dumbledore in the first 2 Harry Potter films. But he is excellent in this as the priest who trains him in prison. But it's a classic story. It's a classic story about revenge and how while you may be justified and understandable in your desire for revenge, that it does nothing but eat you and destroy your relationships is basically the point of this film. And it's very well done.
Yeah, that's a movie that I really like too. I think one of the best adaptations of a classic novel in the modern era.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, Rob, you got anything else?
I do not.
All right, well, that is the episode. Thanks for tuning in to Film for Fans. Make sure you visit filmforfans.com, where you can get my review of Top Gun Maverick along with lots of other content. And tell your friends about the podcast. Share it, like it, comment on it, do all that good stuff. Until next time, enjoy the movies.